Part 6 is a question and answer forum.
All right, well, let's just get started, and then let's see where this goes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Penny Starr with CNS News. So you've all said that the Gowdy, the Select Committee report, did not draw conclusions. Can you expand on why you think that happened, and if there can still be conclusions drawn, or was that $1.7 million and all that time just
7 million, yeah.
7 million?
Tom, you want to take that one?
Well, I think he had his reasons, political, just like everything. My take is we hired him to do this. It's a complex issue, and that he should have had conclusions. And so I'm openly critical of them. Now, I do believe that part of the problem is the Republican leadership, along with the Democratic leadership, had approved the black operations that were going on that Claire mentioned about weapons going from Benghazi to Turkey into Syria, and she says radical Islamists or Al-Qaeda like ISIS. We built up ISIS forces with those weapons, along with others. And none of them want to admit, because they were about that high in those days. And so the administration thought that they could help take down Bashar al-Assad. But the fact is we helped create ISIS. And I think that's the dirty little secret that nobody wants out. And because Boehner had approved it, McConnell had approved it, Rogers had approved it, but the Big Six had all approved it. But that isn't the issue. The issue is, why didn't we try to help Americans? That would have not exposed that black operation at all if we would have responded and saved those, at least 2 of them. But for whatever reason, the president decided not to. Despite what he says, the president is the one that decided not to. And everybody else has backed him. And as Ace said, this is not the America that we know. Claire?
Anyone else? You want to add?
Leave it at that.
Okay, next. Yes, sir.
John Malloy, Chair, National Vietnam and Gulf War Veterans Coalition. I have a couple of different questions. One is, every time I hear Mike Rogers with something to think about, I was made aware that his wife was responsible for the security at the Benghazi mission, and he, as head of the Intelligence Committee, has been given cover and consequently resigned. So I suspect that he's complicit also in this cover-up.
Let me give Claire to take that, and why don't you talk about a little the security at the
You're referring, I'm sure, to the Aegis company. The parent company, Aegis LLC, headquartered in London. The American subdivision of that was headed by Christy Rogers, and it was called Aegis Defense Solutions. And that American subsidiary, yes, won a very large contract to provide worldwide security at U.S. diplomatic missions and other elements of that contract award. But Aegis did not itself provide directly the security in Benghazi. Subsidiaries and those who were subprime contractors received some of that work. It wasn't Aegis per se, but some of the subcontractors, to include Blue Mountain, for example, received that contract. And here's where I think blame does lie, and that is that when Blue Mountain went into Benghazi in 2012 and won part of that protection services award, they, again, just like the rest of the U.S. government, had no clue who was whom in the brew of jihadist militias there, or had any idea how to select security guards on the basis of whether they would be jihadis or not jihadis. And therefore, Blue Mountain wound up hiring people, security people for our mission, the ambassador's compound, and as well, the U.S. government and the annex also relied on militias like the February 17 Martyrs Brigade. Martyrs Brigade. Does this ring a bell with anybody? That the name itself should have set off alarm bells. But again, because nobody was allowed to understand, to know the connection between Islamic doctrine, law, and scripture and Islamic terror, the words jihad and sharia and caliphate were all purged from the lexicon. They hired the very people, the very jihadis to guard our mission who were our enemies. That's the bottom line on that.
Dana? Dana Milbank, go ahead.
Could I just press you all a little more on the Gowdy committee? Is the concern that he pulled his punches, that there was more information they didn't put in the report, or is it more a question of the information's there but not the conclusions?
I think the information, well, go ahead, Ace.
No, I think the information was there, and that the why the conclusions were not made is a question that we've raised. The information was there. So I think you, again, it's, let me tell you, you got to have a lot of backbone and guts in this town, which you well know. And, when you put yourself on the line, you got to be willing to stand up and be held accountable. Regretfully, I don't think he measured up yesterday.
Yeah, I just would say that,
Stephanie had a question.
oh, okay. Well, I was going to finish answering that and just make another point about that, is that, yeah, they didn't give the story enough context, and that's what we feel we've done here. What took us into Libya in the first place? What happened with these arms flowing there? Why were we there? And then the other parts of the story, the failures of the security, what was the reasoning? And so they didn't, they put a bunch of transcripts in there, interviews, but they didn't weave it all together in a narrative that explains everything. And that, I think, is the problem with it. You agree?
Yeah, no, I do agree. They did not draw the narrative the way we drew it, and I think if you read this report, you will see a narrative that is cohesive and very thoroughly referenced.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I have a, Stephanie Jason, I have a follow-up question to one that was just asked. I actually read the full report, and it's very informative, and I really do think everyone must read it in detail. All the facts are there. But what I found interesting was the passages that talk about the meeting in the White House at 7:30 that the Secretary Clinton participated in. It doesn't even say her name. It just says secretary. Everyone else in the report is named individually with their title. They don't do that with her. They just call her secretary, and you have to figure out that they're talking about Secretary Clinton because then they preference it with Department of State before everything else. So when I'm watching this unfold yesterday and reading this, I'm almost wondering if, has someone in the GOP leadership gotten their fingers involved in watering down some of this against Secretary Clinton? And it leads me to believe that this is a similar instance where the House Judiciary Committee passed a bill to ban the Muslim Brotherhood in American soil, but the GOP leadership is preventing that from going to a vote. I wonder if you could comment on that.
The penetration by the Muslim Brotherhood of the top ranks of United States government, national security, as well as academia, media, and society at large, is massive. It has been going on for many decades, goes back to the years right after World War II, as a matter of fact, to begin with. And so, yes, the influence of the Brotherhood, certainly on Obama foreign policy, but the policy of presidents before him as well. having to do with Middle East policy, policy towards Islam, policy towards the Brotherhood itself. Certainly is strongly influenced by the presence of advisors and appointees at the top ranks of the United States government and national security. And I think, as we mentioned in the report too, this is part of the narrative we have drawn, part of the reason for the Obama White House policy to encourage the Islamic uprising of 2011 and their takeover as anticipated, not as it turned out necessarily, but as they wanted and anticipated in Tunisia and Libya and Egypt. As far as that bill that is in Congress, it is sponsored by Senator Ted Cruz, if I'm not mistaken, and it is a sense of the Senate, kind of a resolution to urge the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. It does, as you say, languish. Currently, as we speak, it'll have to pass a number of hurdles to become policy, but the State Department governs the naming of organizations to the foreign terrorist organizations list.
Someone else. Go ahead. Yes. You want to identify yourself?
Second with military.com. Much has been made of the delays in getting the Marine FAST team out to Libya. And since you have this report and you've got these retired general officers on the panel, I was curious to hear your thoughts of, since the FAST team was not pre-positioned, since it was in Rota, when would the order to deploy have to come? When would they have had to leave to make any kind of real difference on the ground?
One of you gentlemen?
Well, I think at the time that when Secretary Panatas gave the order to deploy the forces, that's what probably triggered them at that point. They should have been alerted before that. Certainly with the out-of-control security situation, with the warning that was given on the 29th of August that Benghazi had to be put on a special alert status. So, this is not PhD stuff. This is common sense. You do what you have to do. And regretfully, it wasn't done. What I haven't found is why wasn't it done? Because it's really a dereliction of duty.
If I might add to that just a bit, Secretary Panetta gave the order for the FAST teams in Rota to deploy, to move to at least down to Sigonella, if not onward to Benghazi, at about 2 a.m. in the morning. That would be local time. Unfortunately, those teams had to wait until, if I recall correctly, but double check me in the report, something like 8 a.m. the following morning or later for a plane to come from Germany to pick them up and transport them, in the midst of which they had to receive conflicting orders about what clothing to wear, uniforms or civies, and they changed in and out of their clothing multiple times through the night, according to changing orders coming from somewhere above. But in any case, the plane that they needed to take them anywhere never got to them until the following morning, by which time everything was over, and in the end, they wound up traveling to Tripoli rather than Benghazi.
Well, there were two teams. One was supposed to go to Tripoli, and the other one was supposed to go to Benghazi. The one to Benghazi got canceled. And of course, you have to ask why. They should have went in there, secured the facility, and so like all the CNN reporters and everybody else went in there and found Ambassador Stevens' memo and so forth, and it took the FBI another 3.5 weeks to get there. Come on.
So if they had been able to deploy within the hour of 2 a.m. From Rota, Spain, do you think they could have arrived in time to save any American lives?
I'm not sure if the FAST teams would have
I don't
been
think
able
so.
to make a difference, even for the two whose lives were lost at the very end of the night with a mortar attack. But other assets, as the Admiral talked about earlier, the F-16 certainly could have gotten there well in advance and in time enough to make a difference. But again, it was that cross-border authority that was withheld. Secretary of State Clinton preferred to defend a re-election campaign above defending American lives that night.
Yeah, all right, I'm sorry. We'll get to everybody. Yeah, okay.
I have a quick question. It's about Ahmed Abu Khatala. And a lot of people seem to overlook the man who was brought to the United States as one of the leaders of the Benghazi attack. It's my understanding that Khatala was a brigade commander for the rebels during the revolution, which our government armed, aided, and abetted as a part of the Libya revolution. He executed the leadership of the attack in Benghazi, was subsequently taken from Libya by our forces, brought back to the United States. Now my question is this: doesn't that tie the revolution and the actions of the administration during the revolution to aid and abet the enemy to an attack, killing the lives of brave Americans, attacking our facilities directly, a terrorist attack? And furthermore, he was abducted by our forces back in 2014. Why hasn't he gone to trial? He will not go to trial until September 2017, conveniently after the election. What is going on?
Yeah, Abu Khatala, just as you say, Stefan, exactly, was the commander of a smallish jihadist militia that fought against the regime of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. By 2012, his group, like other militias, had folded into the newly created umbrella group of Ansar al-Sharia, which before 2012 had not been established in Libya. So now his militia is part of that bigger group, Ansar al-Sharia, including many other jihadi groups across Libya. And so, yes, I don't know if any of the aid that the United States or NATO permitted through the barricades, the blockade in 2011, if any of those weapons, most of which came from Qatar, actually supplied Abu Khatala's militia or not. We don't know that information. But certainly Gaddafi would never have been overthrown if the Western powers hadn't intervened. So now he's part of Ansar al-Sharia in 2012. He did not apparently play a large role in the attack on our mission in September 2012, but he has been placed at the scene, and yes, he was picked up and brought to the States ostensibly for trial. Andy McCarthy, the brilliant former Department of Justice prosecutor in the Blind Sheikh case back in 1995, has written about this and many other things. By the way, he testified brilliantly yesterday on Capitol Hill at Senator Ted Cruz's committee hearing on Islam and Jihad. But Andy has written about this very case, and here's an interesting point. If indeed the attack on our mission in Benghazi was due to some video and mobs that were protesting and got out of control, well then how can you possibly prosecute a guy, charge him, indict him, prosecute him like Abu Khatala for being a mastermind of a terror attack on our mission at the same time? It just doesn't compute. So I can understand the U.S. government prosecution might be in something of disarray.
Cliff.
I have a two-pronged question. The refrain we hear from the media is, oh, there's nothing new here, nothing new in the Gowdy report. Is there anything new here? And moreover, is the Obama administration policy of supporting jihadists or terrorists in the Middle East continuing? We just saw this explosion and attack in Turkey. We know the administration is openly acknowledging sending arms to an affiliate of the PKK, a notorious terrorist group that has been bombing Turkey and killing thousands of people for years. What about that policy? Have they not learned anything? Or is it just continuing because we don't learn the lessons and don't refer to these people in charge as what they are? And finally, the uncle of Sean Smith on Fox News this morning was asked point blank. He said, this report you have is much better than the Gowdy report, but he got to the nub of it, going way beyond what you've said. He says Clinton and Obama are criminals.
Yes.
They're traitors. He said that on the air. What do you think?
They are.
Yeah.
Cliff, if I may corroborate that, Michael called me after he did that this morning, and he said those exact same words.
You know, Cliff, the policy as we define it, and again, I do think this is the value of this report, that we weave together, we connect the dots, and we tell the narrative and why it happened, not just a sequence of date and time and events, but why it happened, and why it happened gets to your question. The policy of the Obama administration and the Hillary Clinton State Department was to support, enable, aid, and abet Islamic jihadis, in particular the Muslim Brotherhood, both domestically and abroad. Yes, that policy continues. And so the events in Libya are a part of that, a critical part, and one of those places where American lives were lost because of that policy. And because, again, the priority of defending a president's reelection campaign took priority over defending the lives of American citizens in danger.
What about, can I ask you though to comment, you were in the CIA. What about this open policy now of supporting this PKK affiliate, affiliated with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, an old KGB creation? Do you defend that?
I don't speak for the CIA, and I had nothing to do with the Middle East when I was serving in any case, but you're referring to the hodgepodge, really, of different militia groups over in the Middle East battle space right now. The PKK, the Turkish Workers' Party, as you say, with communist roots, has been fighting against the Turkish government for a very long time. But the problem is that its affiliates, its Kurdish partners, inside of the former Syria, including the YPG and other groups there, are some of the most effective fighters in the field against the Islamic State, which provides puts up a conundrum. People want to defeat the Islamic State. By the way, I don't know why they don't want to defeat the equally jihadist regime in Tehran at the same time and its satellite puppet regimes in Damascus and Baghdad, but that might be a separate question. But the problem is that the Kurds, the Peshmerga, those who face death, have proven to be some of the most effective fighters in that battle space. And so where do you draw the line on whom to assist and back and help when the objective seems to be single-mindedly, rather tunnel vision, if I might say so, to take down the Islamic State without ever considering the other jihadis in the battle space? It's a very confusing situation.